Hello, welcome. I am Day. We all experience loss on so many levels. Over the past few years, I have personally experienced the loss of beloved family members. Some of these family members were elderly or ill. Some were children under the age of 18. Grief sits within. Let's walk together as we grieve one day at a time on this weekly podcast that will be posted each Sunday at 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Fair use. Grief. One day at a time. "365 Meditations to Help You Heal After Loss" by Alan D. Wolfett, PhD. Fair use. January 15th. During a panic attack, I remember that today is just today, and that is all that it is. I take a deep breath in, and I realize that in this moment I am fine and everything is okay. Max Greenfield. It's thought that about 10% of us experience panic attacks at least occasionally. Panic attacks are sudden, overwhelming feelings of intense fear, complete with symptoms like shortness of breath, sweatiness, heart palpitations, shaking, and anxiety about losing control or even dying. They commonly come on without warning and in situations that, on the surface at least, seem safe or normal. Essentially, panic attacks are misfirings of our built-in fight or flight systems. They're now known to be triggered by cues, internal and external, that our brains interpret as danger. The natural fears and worries we experience in grief can act as such cues. In fact, in grief, panic attacks are often invitations to go backward and explore any aspects of our loss that make us feel fearful or anxious. If you're suffering from panic attacks, I urge you to see a licensed therapist who can help you explore them and get them under control. Until you find ways to tame your panic attacks or intense fears, you will not have the focus or sense of safety you need to grieve, mourn, and heal. If I'm feeling panicky or suffering panic attacks, that simply means I need help calming my body's fight or flight system. Fair use. January 16. "But I don't want to go among mad people," Alice remarked. "Oh, you can't help that," said the cat. "We're all mad here." Lewis Carroll. Most of us feel crazy at some point in our grief journeys. After all, it's a mad place to be. We don't want to be here, but here we are. The real crazy thing is, crazy is normal in grief. Loss upends us, and we realize that our lives will never fully return to the mostly stable, sensical version of reality we thought we inhabited. Excuse me. We thought we inhabited. Now we know it's human existence that's crazy, not our grief. The meditation for today. Today I'll remember that we're all mad here. Beauty, love, and joy live in the madness too. January 17th, fair use. Guilt isn't always a rational thing. Cleo realized guilt is a weight that will crush you, whether you deserve it or not. Maureen Johnson. We grievers tend to be good at guilt. We may feel guilty that someone else died and we're still alive. We might feel guilty when we catch ourselves experiencing moments of happiness, reasoning that the person who died deserves our unflagging sadness. We can feel guilty about bad things that happened in our relationships with the people who died. We may feel guilty about things we did or didn't do that we imagine may have contributed to the death somehow. However irrational this thinking might be, and in cases of lingering death, such as from cancer, we often feel guilty about the relief we feel. We can't simply dismiss our guilt, though. Like all our other thoughts and feelings, our guilt isn't right or wrong. It simply is. And because it exists, we need to find ways to express it. That's how to soften guilt, expressing it outside of ourselves until we mostly don't feel it anymore. The meditation for today. If I feel guilty about something that has to do with the person who died, it doesn't mean I actually am to blame, but it does mean I need to talk to good listeners about it. Let's take a moment to breathe and sit with that. Fair use. January 18. Your body is precious. It is your vehicle for awakening. Treat it with care. Buddha. We feel our grief in our bodies. We may have headaches, stomach aches, back pain, heartburn, or other common symptoms. We may feel short of breath, nauseated, or generally not good. We're more likely to come down with viruses. We may not be eating or sleeping well. All of these grief symptoms are really signals that we need to give attention to our need to mourn. But it's hard to do our necessary grief work if we're not feeling well physically. The answer lies in focusing first on good self-care. We must eat nutritious foods and exercise, at least lightly most days. We must drink 6 tall glasses of water each day because we are at risk of dehydration. Rest is especially important. We must lay our bodies down 2 or 3 times a day for 20 minutes, even if we're not able to fall asleep. If insomnia is an ongoing problem, we need to see our doctors. We simply cannot mourn well if we're not sleeping well. The meditation. I will make good physical self care a priority because it's integral to my healing. Fair use. January 19. Nothing resembles selfishness more closely than self respect. George Sand. Especially early in our grief, we may find ourselves deaf to the needs of others. We may not want to listen to other people's problems. We may not have the energy to attend to our children or other family members who may also be grieving. We often feel flabbergasted that the world is still turning while our lives are at a complete standstill. Are we being self indulgent? Are we too wrapped up in ourselves? Has grief turned us into narcissistic egomaniacs? Actually, the temporary selfishness of grief is a form of self respect. When all we can think about is how we are feeling, it's because we've been torn apart and need to work on putting ourselves back together before we can be of use to others. Our self focus honors this reality. I call it the cocooning phenomenon, and it's normal and necessary. Think of it like the smart advice to put on your own oxygen mask first in the event of an airplane catastrophe. If you don't, you'll conk out completely, and then what good are you to yourself or to others or to anyone else? The meditation for today. I must attend to my own grief right now. I am the priority. January 20th. Fair use. We think that the point is to pass the test or overcome the problem, but the truth is that things don't really get solved. They come together and they fall apart. Then they come together again and fall apart again. The healing comes from letting there be room for all of this to happen, room for grief, for relief, for misery, for joy. Pema Chodron. Oh, how we wish we could solve our grief. If only we could fix it, cure it, resolve it, just make it go away. Wouldn't it be something if we could feel only our love for those who have died and none of the hurt? Alas, that's not how hu- that's not how being human works. We can't cure our grief. We can only become reconciled to it. We can only learn to integrate it into our continued living. The healing comes not from eliminating the pain, but from making room for the pain. When we accommodate the hurt, we also create space for new love and joy. The meditation. I am starting to embrace the understanding that things come together, then fall apart, then come together again. There is room in my life for all of this to happen. January 21. Fair use. I wouldn't live with me. Believe me, I'm moody. Mario Cantone. Lots of us find ourselves moody in grief, even if we weren't particularly temperamental people before. Our mood changes can be subtle or dramatic. They can be triggered by a familiar place, a song, an insensitive comment, or even a change in the weather. I think our moods are simply our grief talking to us, much in the way that fluctuating hormones can make the emotions of teenagers and pregnant women volatile. Our grief courses through our minds, bodies, and souls, spiking at seemingly random moments. When we notice our fickle feelings flare, let's try to be patient and understanding with ourselves. We can embrace and experience each new mood as it arises, while at the same time maintaining a calm awareness that the feeling is normal and temporary. In other words, we can both ride the roller coaster and stand on the sidelines, watching ourselves ride the roller coaster. A mindfulness trick that takes practice. This can help us feel a sense of peace even in the middle of our naturally mercurial morning. Mercurial morning. Mercurial is spelled Mercurial. I hope I'm pronouncing it right, but I'm spelling it so that if not, you'll have the spelling, and I will look it up later. Mercurial morning. So I will back up and read that sentence again. I apologize for my blunder. A mindfulness trick that takes practice. This can help us feel a sense of peace even in the middle of our naturally mercurial morning. The meditation. When I'm moody, I'm moody. It's okay. Grief, one day at a time. 365 meditations to help you heal. After Loss by Alan D. Wolfett, PhD. Read by me, Day, DAA. Those are my initials. Of DHB Recovery Network. Please share and subscribe. And most of all, be the you that you are created to be.